If you found yourself locked in an apartment with armed soldiers outside and a sudden zombie attack inside, what would you do? We'll be breaking down the nifty-gritty scenes from the movie Quarantine. Angela Vidal, our spunky news reporter, and her trusty cameraman Scott Percival were interviewing two firefighters, Jake and George Fletcher, who were their hosts for the evening, but little did they know, this wasn't going to be another routine night on the job. In fact, it had turned into something far more vile and sinister. Before they get started, Scott was trying to charm the firefighters, while Angela was trying to keep the camera steady. You see, Scott wasn't just any cameraman, he was an aspiring comedian, always ready with a punchline. But the banter was interrupted when the Fletcher brothers got an emergency call from a local apartment building. Apparently, screams were from Mrs. Espinosa's apartment, and the whole place was in chaos. The landlord, Yuri, his wife Wanda, and a bunch of other residents were in the mix too, including a vet named Lawrence and an opera teacher named Bernard. Despite being warned by the brothers, Angela and Scott tagged along, expecting nothing more than a minor fire to spice up their story. But the chaos escalated when they entered Mrs. Espinosa's place. She wasn't herself, to put it mildly, and she took a bite out of poor James and Fletcher. When the light hits her face, she becomes even more wild. In the heat of the moment, Danny, one of the police officers in tow, had to put her down, but things were far from okay. Elise, another resident, was in the same weird state, and the crew had to haul her and the others downstairs. Those who were bitten by Espinosa started getting sicker than a dog with fleas. Okay, now here's the thing. If you are a reporter, don't go into a building that you think is about to burn down. I mean, yes, it would make for great TV, but you know what they say. Be careful what you wish for. If it were me, I would have stayed outside the building as advised by the firefighters. Instead of entering the building, it's better to use remote-controlled drones with cameras to capture the footage from a safe distance. Drones are increasingly used in emergency situations for recon as they provide real-time footage without risking human lives. In this scenario, they could be vital for gathering information without direct exposure. Now, yes, I know what you're thinking. Good luck finding a drone in 2008. Drones were still a relatively new technology at the time, and they were not yet widely used by the media. However, there were a few early adopters who used drones to capture aerial footage for news stories. For example, the BBC used a drone to film the aftermath of the 2008 Sichuan earthquake. So if it were accessible, it would have definitely come in handy. But if it wasn't, I'd still wait for the firefighters to de-escalate the situation first, and once the coast is clear, I'd be the first one to assess and report the situation. Reporters who enter a dangerous situation can also interfere with the rescue efforts. On the other hand, firefighters and other first responders need to be able to do their jobs without having to worry about reporters getting in their way. Plus, reporters who put themselves in danger can also damage their credibility. If they're injured while covering a story, it can call into question their judgment and make it harder for them to be taken seriously in the future. So, it is also important here to act professionally. That means staying calm and collected, even in a crisis situation. It also means following the basic instructions of firefighters and other first responders. And as soon as Miss Espinosa displays aggressive behavior, I just take a step back. It's not a good idea to put the flash or light on Miss Espinosa for several reasons, which include both practical and safety considerations. Our eyes take time to adapt to low light conditions, especially when transitioning from a well-lit area to a dark one. When the first responders enter a scene, they typically rely on low-level lighting or night vision equipment to maintain their adaptability in low-light environments. This allows them to see better without revealing their presence to potential threats. Shining a bright light on someone suddenly, especially if they are in a state of distress or confusion, can temporarily blind them. This is due to a phenomenon known as the flash blindness. The intense light overwhelms the eye's ability to adjust, causing temporary vision impairment. In a hostile situation, this can provoke a sudden, unpredictable response from the individual being eliminated. When exposed to a sudden burst of light, people may experience tunnel vision, a physiological response that narrows their field of vision. And for first responders, maintaining a wide view of field is crucial for situational awareness and personal safety. Tunnel vision can limit their ability to perceive potential threats in their peripheral vision. Police officers and other first responders are trained to approach potentially dangerous situations with caution. They typically use verbal commands and low-light tactics to de-escalate situations and assess threats. Directly shining a light in someone's face can escalate tension and aggression, as it may be perceived as a threat. In situations like this, a reporter accompanying first responders should prioritize safety and not interfere with their procedures. The role of a reporter is to observe, document, and relay information to the public. They should maintain a safe distance, avoid obstructing first responders, and adhere to any safety instructions provided by authorities. It's important to also note that I'm not armed here, so regardless of how old she looks, I had to react quickly. Officer Danny did the right thing by putting her down. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. The authorities and the CDC swoop in like they're taking over a crime scene in a crime drama. They slap a quarantine on the building, telling everyone, "Sorry folks, you can't leave the party." Angela, being the reporter she is, starts interviewing Brianna, who's got a sick dog at the vet. Lawrence, the vet, isn't too happy because he's recognizing these symptoms as something you'd see in rabies. And just when you thought it couldn't get any crazier, a rabid dog goes to town on Randy, the lawyer. Angela, Scott, Bernard, and Sadie didn't get attacked by Elise, and Scott has to pull a move straight out of an action movie to survive. CDC officers in hazmat suits show up, and they start testing Fletcher and James. But guess what? Fletcher and James aren't staying down. They wake up and take a bite out of one of those hazmat wearing folks and poor Lawrence. The truth finally comes out, and it's a doozy. Brianna's dog is patient zero in this pandemic nightmare. Brianna herself goes full zombie and takes a bite out of her own mother before making a run for it. I guess you can say that's a family dinner that has went terribly wrong. Inside that quarantine apartment building, it was like the 4th of July, but instead of hot dogs, there were people trying to feast on each other. Angela and Scott were now stuck in what could only be described as a maze of madness. As they ventured deeper into the building, the tension was so thick, you could cut it with a chainsaw. The residents who hadn't been turned into zombie-like creatures were huddled in their apartments praying for their nightmare to end. But it wasn't ending, it was just getting started. Now, rabies is a viral infection transmitted through saliva. And if I had to deal with the infected residents, I would have used fire extinguishers. Fire extinguishers release a cloud of gas that can disorient attackers, buying time to escape. They also contain chemicals that can temporarily disrupt an attacker's vision and respiratory system, giving you a better chance to flee. I'd have also sealed the room with a strong door and barricaded it with furniture. In this situation, creating a secure isolation area is critical. Barricading doors can slow down the infected individuals and provide more time for rescue teams to arrive. Let's get scientific here. In a real-world situation, if you suspect a viral outbreak, the CDC wouldn't just walk in without proper precautions. And us being resourceful, we could quickly rig up some DIY isolation suits using plastic bags, duct tape, and, well, whatever we can find. This way, I'd be able to protect myself from potential exposure and negotiate with the CDC from a position of relative safety. Since Brianna's dog is patient zero, Lawrence, the vet, could recognize the symptoms earlier as a viral infection. If it were me, I'd suggest isolating the dog in a makeshift quarantine area and testing its blood. If we could confirm it is rabies, we could try to find some post-exposure prophylaxis, also known as PEP for the survivors, which include rabies vaccines. The rabies vaccine helps the body develop its own immunity to rabies. It is given in a series of shots over several days. The specific PEP treatment that's recommended depends on the circumstances of the exposure. For example, people who have been bitten by a rabid animal or a literal zombie may experience a completely different regimen as opposed to the people who have had contact with the saliva of a rabid animal without being bitten. This treatment needs to be implemented as soon as possible after the exposure. The sooner it is started, the more effective it is. PEP is generally safe and effective, however, there are some side effects that can occur, such as pain, redness, and swelling at the injection site. But at that moment, it's more important to stay human and not get get infected. So by following this strategy, we might have had a fighting chance without turning into the living dead. But instead of relying solely on blood tests, I'd adopt a more conscious approach. I'd force anyone showing symptoms of infection to be immediately isolated regardless of blood test results to prevent further spread. And we can't forget the most important thing here. Many apartment buildings have fire escape routes. Fire escapes are required by law in all multiple dwellings in New York City since the 20th century. This means that most buildings in New York would have had fire escapes by then. With that in mind, I would head to the nearest window and check if there's a fire escape outside. Now, bear in mind, there are snipers pointing guns at every window and every entrance. I test every exit to find one that's not being scoped. Realize that our situation is dire. Using the camera as a tool for communication is the best option here. Instead of relying solely on cell phones or landlines, which may be cut off, I'd start recording messages for help, explaining my location, the quarantine, and the need for assistance. These video messages can be uploaded to social media or sent to news outlets later if I can regain access to the internet. While exploring, it's also important to take note of the locations of emergency exits. This knowledge could be crucial in case I need to make a quick escape or bypass the locked doors. Using the camera, I'd continue recording the events. I'd include footage of Miss Espinosa's attack and our efforts to defend ourselves. If I'd regain access to the internet later, this footage could serve as evidence of the situation and a plea for help. So, what do our remaining heroes do? They hightail it to the upstairs room and lock themselves in. But turns out, they've got bitten folks on board too, and the lights also go off. Yuri, the landlord, thinks he's got a plan, suggesting they head down to the basement, which just so happens to lead to the sewers. But guess what? Yuri gets a nasty bite from the health inspector, who's gone full zombie. Wanda, Yuri's wife, isn't leaving him behind, and she gets bitten by Sadie. In the end, it's just Jake, Angela, and Scott remaining. They manage to find the basement key and deal with more biters along the way, but Jake gets bitten by Yuri and goes down swinging. Angela and Scott are on the run, and things are looking bleak. Angela and Nick go to Yuri's apartment trying to find the key to unlock the attic door. The problem is that there are many keys in Yuri's apartment. When they look for the key, they find 30 keys on a keychain. Then they stumble into the attic and guess what they find? Lab equipment and newspaper clippings, like something out of a conspiracy theorist's wildest dreams. It turns out a former tenant was part of a doomsday cult that swiped a biological weapon called the Armageddon virus. Just when you thought it couldn't get any worse, a trapdoor creaks open and Scott loses the camera light. They switch to night vision and hear some banging. What's making that noise? A monstrous figure, blindly searching for a midnight snack. Pause. Okay, once I realized it's a bad idea to rely solely on the vet for medical care, I'd start looking for medical supplies in various apartments. What are we looking for? Bandages, antiseptics, painkillers, and other basic medical supplies. I'd select a specific apartment as a makeshift quarantine area. It should be able to lock from the inside, making sure that the infected individuals are isolated. It's also important to maintain regular temperature checks and symptom tracking to identify potential infections early. When Jake is bitten, it would have been better to amputate his arm to prevent the spread of the virus. That way, there is a bigger chance of him surviving. But when someone is clearly infected, they should be killed or left behind. Period. In life-threatening situations, hesitation can be fatal. If you need to defend yourself or make a difficult decision, do so decisively. While helping others is admirable, your personal safety should be a priority. It's important to assess risk before attempting to rescue someone. When getting the key from Yuri's apartment, finding the right key becomes a critical issue because we're running out of time. Nick has been bitten, and we need to unlock the attic door and get to safety before it's too late. Searching through multiple keys in this situation can be slow and inefficient. It's important to keep in mind that there might be more zombies lying around. Yuri's idea isn't bad, but it's crucial to stay prepared. Instead of blindly heading into the basement, I would have grabbed some heavy-duty cleaning supplies. Bleach is our best friend here. I can mix it with water to create a strong disinfectant and carry it with me. If we encounter a biter here, I can splash some bleach on them to potentially neutralize the virus in their saliva temporarily. It's a risky move, but it might buy us some time to escape. Instead of using any lights that can trigger the infected, using the camera's night vision mode would be a safe option. Keeping lights on attracts attention and makes it easier for infected individuals to spot us. Turning off unnecessary lights could improve our chances of survival. Before entering the attic, I'd carefully observe the environment from a safe distance. Once again, I'd use the camera's night vision to assess the situation, including the number of infected individuals in the attic and their behavior. I would also take a closer look at those newspaper clippings and try to find any clues about who was involved in this doomsday cult. If it's possible to identify any members, they might have some useful information or even an antidote. It's a long shot, but it's better than waiting around to become a zombie dinner. It's obvious that there was a bigger mastermind behind all of this, so it's possible they could have potential traps lying around. We need to be extremely careful here. Knowing that escape plans can go awry, it's important to have a backup plan in case the basement escape route is compromised. To avoid direct confrontation with any infected, I come up with a plan to distract and divert the infected individual's attention. This might involve creating a noise or disturbance in another part of the attic to draw them away from their path. As planned before, I'd also keep a weapon that can be used to protect myself in the attic. Before entering the room, I'd identify multiple escape routes with the attic in case a diversion tactic fails. Now, as they see the Slender Man getting closer, they try to make a run, but Scott drops the camera when this creature goes all Hannibal Lecter on him. Angela grabs the camera, and what does she see? Scott becoming the main course. And before she can say cut, she's on the menu too, as she's dragged to the darkness by our surprise guest. But if you were Angela or Scott, what would you have done? Leave your comments down below. Booyah!